Hello and welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Suchitra Vavilala and today I'm delighted to be having discussion about tech and tech careers with Ms. Sapna Chadha, the Vice President Marketing at Google in India, Southeast Asia and South Asia. Hi Sapna, hi.
Hi,
So
how are you, Suchitras?
I'm good, how are you?
Very good.
So would you like to tell our audience a bit about yourself and what you do, like about your
Sure,
role?
I'd love to. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sapna. I head marketing for Google in India and Southeast Asia. What that means is I spend a lot of time working on growing Google's products in India and the markets of Southeast Asia and the South Asian frontier. So it's about 12 countries that represent over 2 billion users. And we cover all of Google's products that you've probably heard of, from search to YouTube, Maps, Chrome, our advertising products, and all of the likes of Google's products that many of you, I'm sure, use in your day-to-day. Our company's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. This is very close to my heart. I believe that information is a democratizer, and that's why I joined Google. Ultimately, our products at the core are helpful because of our mission. They help people get info, they help people make decisions and build businesses. And the work we do in the region where I spend most of my time is to make the internet accessible and to make it useful, because the internet isn't available yet for everyone in all parts of the world, that we take it for granted. And though people use Google every day, we don't take that for granted, because the inherent helpfulness of technology and our products can really change lives. So that's a little bit about what we do today. I cover product growth, I cover strategy, I cover the reputation of Google in the markets in which we operate. I have a team of about 120, and that's a little bit about me. I'm based in Singapore, but I spent half of my career in the US before moving to Asia. I've now been in Asia for 15 years, but before that, I spent the first part of my career based in the US, where I started in consulting, spent some time in financial services, but now I've been at Google for over 7 years, and technology marketing is the heart of what I do today.
Thank you so much for telling us about your role. It was very informative. So I would like to know that what is something that you like about your job? What is something that you like about what you do every day?
I think the great thing about my job and is the purpose that I get from it. I get to, I talked about how technology is an enabler, and I get to see that in action every day. I see the power of information when we make it available to women, for example. We have gender gap in many parts of the world, which stems from socioeconomic and other divides. And actually, information becomes an enabler to those groups. And I get to spend my time making the internet more equal. I also get to work on products that have AI and artificial intelligence and data modeling at the core of it. Most recently, some of the work my team did was around supporting the product teams that have built flood forecasting and ability for Google to understand and predict floods based on data. For several years, we've been working with governments to develop systems that predict when and where flooding might occur. And we've expanded those models in partnership with bodies like the Indian Central Water Commission. And these are just a few examples of the things that I get to do in my job that people probably don't understand from the work that I do as head of Google marketing, that you would spend time on really driving a difference and making an impact, which can be life-changing. And that's when I see the work that Google does to really help audiences and user groups that face unique challenges and how we bring data and tech to solve those. That's ultimately what makes me love my job. Obviously, I like seeing people use some of our core products like search and YouTube. YouTube is an amazing learning platform. And
Yeah.
when you hear stories about how technology can be an enabler, sometimes we talk about the bad side of tech, and that we're dependent on tech, and that tech has changed our society, and it has. But the work that I do shows me that the power of technology to do good, AI for social good, technology for good. That's what I love about my job, and I fundamentally believe that the good outweighs any of the bad.
That's actually very true because technology is very impactful, especially in today's day. And I also feel like technology, humans, because due to technology, there is more innovation and humans have more time in creating new ideas. Yes. So since you had mentioned about how about the gender divide on the internet, could you tell us about Google's Internet Sathi program?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So I mentioned that our mission is making the world's information accessible and useful for everyone,
Yes.
and that technology can help level inequities across the world. And of all the problems this to be solved globally, this is one that's closest to my heart: is gender inequality
Yeah.
across access, education, pay, everything, right? And so there's been many initiatives in our team that we've taken to bridge gaps for women, but the Internet Sati program is a digital literacy program that focuses on making internet access equitable. In 2015, only 1 out of every 10 internet users in India was a woman, like 1 in 10. And we realized that you know, you don't see that kind of inequity in anything. These kinds of numbers were really shocking to me and my team. And we said, what can we do about this? And we realized a couple of things. One, it wasn't going to take something very very normal or traditional to change something like this. And we
Yeah.
thought, okay, if we train women, maybe they'll come online. But training it's a one-way approach. It actually isn't scalable to the same extent. A lot of women are not allowed to come and attend trainings had we set them up. There's a
Yes.
lot of barriers to be able to do that. And so we ended up partnering with Tata Trusts, one of the premier um, institutions in the country that care just about as much about this problem as we did. And we came together, and what we did was we realized that we could help women within villages to help each other, right? And so ultimately, it's like a hub and a spoke model. You train a woman in a village, they then see the power of the internet. Then we equip them with data-enabled devices. We gave them the knowledge, the power, the devices, the access, the confidence. And then they, in turn, taught the women around them. Because ultimately, that's what Sati means. It means friend.
Yeah.
And what we realized is women were not aware. They didn't, if you asked them what the definition of the internet was or what it was, they couldn't explain it. And they had preconceived notions on what it could do or what it was, or that it was bad, or that many of them were told that if there was a smartphone in the household, that they would actually um, probably break it, right? They were afraid to touch technology. But once they got the confidence, we were able to see them leap into it and their eyes open to the world of what was possible. And the information that they look for, everything from education to health, to help their kids. They looked at videos to help them do some of their crafts better, to learn how to cook different things. They didn't take it for granted. They asked questions about child marriage, um, about having girl children, like big questions. And what we ended up doing was have trained over 30 million women across
Wow.
300,000 villages. It's a labor of love. It was over years. And we just, this year in 2021, we hit our goal, which was to impact half of India's villages. And I'm proud to say that today the internet gap is not just because of the work Google has done. There's been many organizations that have taken this on, but the internet now, it's about 4 in 10 internet users is a woman. And so we've made a huge inroads together. But to me, the power of this has really been the stories that you hear from women
Yeah.
about what they've done with it. A lot of people questioned and said, oh, maybe they will use it for entertainment and, just for watching, TV or soaps on, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's not what the women I met use the internet for. They used it to do amazing things. And now the next stage of the program is we've actually are focusing on entrepreneurship, because we've
Ooh.
seen many women who, with the information that they've had, realize that they could create micro businesses, that they could learn how to improve. If they were making sari blouses, for example, they've learned how to do it better. And they're now making more money from the work that they're doing because they used the information online to create better products. And now they're wanting to sell those products. And they've brought income to their families. And so our next goal is committed to enabling 1 million women entrepreneurs through the internet satis that we've met. So what I love about the program is it's continuous. It's over time. These things, change takes time. I think sometimes we don't realize that. Change takes time, but then when you see the change, great things happen.
That's true. And who mentors these rural women? Are they like anyone from cities or anyone like
Yeah, we
us?
have a number of partners. For the entrepreneurship piece, we're working with a host of partners that help in this. We have a lot of Google volunteers that do it, but we're working with a number of organizations. One of them that we're working very closely with is Sheroes, and
Ooh.
they have an incomplete network themselves, and women that then ultimately are helping these women in terms of mentorship. And we've created almost like a bit of a digital accelerator for them, a small scale accelerator, which gives them mentorship and support, the tools, the training, etc. Yeah.
That's actually very nice. So, regarding the like internet access and the gender gap on the internet, do you think it varies across regions like urban and rural? Because in a blog you mentioned that the challenges of a rural woman are different from that of an urban woman. So, would you like to emphasize a bit on that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely do differ, but there's inequity everywhere. And so what we saw the widest gap in rural parts, right? So that's where the data point that I shared, 1 in 10 was from
Yeah.
rural India. But there was always a gap even in urban parts as well. I mean, I think now, look, access is changing really fast. Affordable devices are now a thing, right? And I think we will see acceleration, especially in this post-pandemic, or I wouldn't call it
Yes.
post-pandemic, but it's because of the pandemic, we're seeing an
Yeah.
acceleration, and digitization is seeing new,
It's happening.
it's happening faster than ever before. So I think the gap will lessen, but the gap is surely more pronounced, and not just in India. We see the same things in Vietnam, in parts of Africa, and the Middle East. It's across the board. Urban tends to be farther ahead. It varies country to country, and you'll be surprised actually if you see. Um, it's not just that sometimes we believe developing markets are behind. It's not just developing markets that you see a gender gap. We see gender gap across more advanced nations as well. And it stems from a number of things, but like how women are doing more household work. They have less time.
Yeah.
They are not given the kind of
Access.
liberties. They don't
Yeah.
have. They don't have, let's say, their own accounts to make purchases online, etc. Right. So the
That's true.
activity, it looks very different. So you could find women even in urban areas who aren't enabled in the same way that men might be. And so the gaps definitely are more pronounced in rural, but you'll see gaps everywhere. Yeah.
That's true. So, since you, I think in the starting you had mentioned about how you, throughout your career, you have been serving in diverse roles. You were a product manager, you were a consultant, a marketer. How do you think, like, being a part of doing different roles has helped you gain perspective in your current role?
Yeah. I always say that careers are like jungle gyms. I use that line a lot with my team, and with the people I mentor, because I fundamentally believe that you grow by trying many different things. If I look at my career, you mentioned some of the things I've done. I've also
Yeah.
done things that I wouldn't have actually enjoyed or liked. I would have thought, like I jumped into operations for a period of time. I was a chief of staff, for an executive at one point in time, and these these points of, you can call them, they weren't they weren't upward moves, they were lateral moves, and they helped me get a general understanding of the business and to have more of a general management approach to the work that I do. Today, people tell me that they don't see me as just a marketer, that they see me as leading business. And that comes from having tried many different things and understanding, what does product development look like? What does operations look like? What does, I haven't spent a lot of time in finance, but even exposure to that has helped me quite a bit. And being that the chief of staff role, I always tell people they should do something like that, because you get a bird's eye view of organization, that helps you understand things in a different way. I also then have done regional roles where I've worked across a region. I've done global roles where I've sat, in New York, working in headquarters, for some of the organizations I've worked for. And then I've done local market roles focused on in-country, um, outcomes. And so the perspective I've gained, I think the reason to do this is perspective.
Yeah.
And you understand organizations better when you have that perspective. You understand the other side when
Yeah.
you have done the other side. And sometimes I've been asked, like, oh, how do you have so much perspective? Like, or why do you understand the challenges that we as a group face, even though you're on the other side of the coin? But I understand it because I've seen across, and I think it's something that I didn't realize at the time. I didn't plan for it. I started in consulting, and actually by doing consulting, I did different things every 6 months for like a 5-year period of time. And when you do that, you get a different view of so many different things, and it helps. So I am very much a big fan of pushing people to take up different things and not wait, and not, a lot of people say, this is my passion and I want to do this and I just want to go deep in this because I'm so passionate about it. I think that's fine later in life, right? I plan on doing what I'm doing as a marketer. I've landed on what I really love, but I've landed on it after trying many different things. And that would be my advice to many. You don't really know,
What
what
you want to
is
do?
out there, and
Yeah.
until you've tried a bunch of things. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, how about you? I should ask
Yes,
you the
I
reverse
so
question.
I've been
How are you figuring out what you want to do?
I mean, I regarding this entire about a thing about how I don't know exactly what I want to do, but it's just about me trying different things because it's the advice I've gotten recently from many people who've been quite experienced. It's like you don't know what you want to do, so it's better to try, and you might never know what you want to do, but it's always good to have an idea and try and explore. So I'm still in the exploring stage.
And how did you know, that you wanted to get in technology?
So basically, I mean, I grew up in during the age of social media, but After my 10th grade, after my board exams, I took computer science. And when I took computer science, I realized that technology has, I mean, I always knew technology had an impact, but it became more, it was a bigger realization to see how writing programs can help the world so much. Technology is a business enabler, and how YouTube and all these social media and everything runs through with algorithms. So that's when it hit me like, oh wow, like technology is quite impactful. Like I got to see it firsthand. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I think a lot of women and girls your age, they might be afraid of taking on technology. What gives you the confidence to do it?
So I think that, regarding technology, I don't think we need to look at it like, of course it is a male-dominated space. I won't deny that. But I also feel like if it is something you want to do, you will eventually do it. So it's like you're just drawn to it. So if you're a young woman who is looking to get into technology, then you should definitely go for it. And also technology has become so it's everywhere that you can't escape it no matter what you're doing. Even if you're an entrepreneur, you're using technology, or even if anything that you do using technology. So I think all women are in tech, whether they want to like
Yeah,
say it out or not. So I think every woman is
yeah,
confident enough to use technology in her own way.
yeah. I always
Yeah.
say that sometimes it's in our heads that we think it's hard. And I remember when I first got into technology and I was in studying, I was getting my undergrad, and this was before the email was just starting at that time, and I took an information systems course, and I was programming, and I always thought it was hard, like, or I had this vision of what coding or programming looked like, but until you actually do it yourself, and then you realize it's not as hard as it seems.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a different language. Like, obviously when you hear somebody speaking a different language, it seems complicated, and you'll never learn how to speak a whole
Yeah.
different language. But actually, when you start doing it, you realize it's possible. And I think it's the same thing that sometimes there's a lot of name dropping, big words that are used in tech. But actually, when you just get into it and you try and you practice and you write a few
Yeah.
lines of code, or you do your own query, or you build a small database, or whatever it is, then you realize that it's not insurmountable at all. And so it's just
Yeah.
like to get your feet wet. And I have a young daughter now. I see her, she's under 10, but the kind of, the aptitude that she has as she's learning, but she's not afraid. And I think that's the most important thing is
Yeah.
she's not afraid at all. She jumps in. And she doesn't realize that there's a gap in terms of
Yeah.
gender at this stage. And I hope she
I
doesn't
think that's
realize it
good.
ever.
Because
Yeah,
I think the reason a lot of women are afraid is because when they start realizing the biases and stereotypes that actually have no logic to them, that for
yeah,
example that women are not good at tech, they are good at tech, they never had the access to it. Not a majority of women didn't have access to it, that's why there were very few, but now a lot of more women are coming into tech. So where if you see such examples and such women leaders in tech, in the tech field, it inspires more women to feel like we can also do well here, and we can also be like one of them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I don't know if it's just that they didn't have access. I think, it's interesting. My mother was a computer programmer in the 1970s and 80s. And at that point in time, there was actually more women in tech than there are today. And actually, women
Oh,
have been
wow.
pulling themselves out of the field because of the belief that there's bias, or the belief that women are doing it less, or able to do it less well, or the culture in organizations. And that's what we
Yeah.
need to change. If you look back to earlier times, there was actually more equity, and it's getting worse over time. And that's why it's really important that we're having conversations like this, so that we
Yes.
can push each other, right? Because we need to overcome and have, I think it's a confidence challenge, right? More than
Yeah.
anything, it's, and we need to not lose our confidence. that's
And it's
the
about
big,
unlearning whatever has been told to you. Like, don't, this is
yes,
technology. There's nothing,
yes,
there's nothing to fear in, like, it might look uncertain or you might not know about it, but once you get into it, it's not that scary. That's a
yeah.
fact. Yeah. So, in your on your LinkedIn, I have gone through some of your accomplishments and awards. You've been awarded by Impact's 50 Most Influential Women in Media, Advertising, and Marketing, and you've also been awarded as World Woman R in 2020 by World Women's Foundation. So, how do you feel when you look back at your journey? After achieving quite a lot.
I think, I feel like I'm still getting started. I don't like, I look back um, and I think, it's always hard to get like to take these accomplishments. And as women, actually, we tend to shrug these things off. I mean, it's nice to get recognition, but I still think that I have much, much more to do. I think if I look at my journey, I, I've worked hard, I think, and I've put in time to grow in any organization that I've been in. I have a deep level of commitment to the work that I do, and that's why I've grown before joining Google, and now. But now where I feel I am in my journey is to have the biggest impact, right? I think in the role that I'm in today, I will have the ability to really steer things in new directions and ultimately impact the markets that I'm in through the work that we do. And so that's how I feel. I feel I'm just getting started. But I think the big challenge that I needed to overcome was this almost a crisis of belief in oneself. When I moved to India from the US, and it was at a pivotal point in my career where I was moving into more leadership positions, and I started to see less women at the table with me. And many meetings there would be none. And the same thing even when I joined Google, um, there was less female leadership, and I started to wonder like why, and I started to lose a little bit of confidence. But I realized at that moment, and thanks to sponsors that I've had and mentors, family support. I mean, my husband has been probably one of my biggest cheerleaders, and having role models like my mother, right? It's because
Yeah.
of that I pushed forward, and I've overcome those gremlins or demons in my head. But I will say, and that's why I call it out, because I know that many many people reach that point in their career. And so that's what my journey was, a journey of having a lot of confidence in the early part of my career, and then hitting a bit of a wall, but then overcoming that wall. And now, I most recently became vice president at Google, which is,
Yeah.
it's a,
Congratulations on that.
thank you. But to me, it's now in that role that I'm in, it's what can I do? So I think I'm still getting started. And I know I seem old compared to many people. I always call myself a dinosaur at Google, but in reality, I think, I still have much of my career left to go.
I think that's a very good note. Like, that's actually a very good approach because you never stop learning and you never stop doing. So that's a great thing. So
Yes.
you said about, this is true. Like, women do drop. They don't work once they grow in career. So was it like alienating for you when you initially found out less women, and how did it impact the work culture? Because initially, when, like, at my age there are a lot of women, so it doesn't feel any different. It's easier to work in teams. But what about at your stage?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I never thought about this when I was your age, and I hope that many women don't, because I believe that now, like, women have the ability to reach their full potential, and it's really, I always, I say it's really about one's own ability to self-talk, right? To talk yourself into things. You can either talk yourself into things or you can talk yourself out of them. And yeah, it became slightly alienating, when I was the only one in the room. And I remember for one of, there was an opportunity for a big promotion to chief marketing officer at the organization I was in, and I was pregnant with my twins, and I didn't think to put my hand up for that role, and I don't know why, right? I thought that why would they give the CMO role to somebody who's about to go on maternity leave in 3 or 4 months? I looked around and said, oh, I think that person and that person and that person are more uh, experienced than I am, because by years of experience, they might have had more years of experience than me. And I didn't put my hand up for the role. And then I got a call from one of my sponsors one day, and he said to me, why isn't your name in the list here? And I said, I came up with an excuse at the time, but what he said to me will always resonate. He said, do I need to tell you that you're the most qualified person for the role? Because if I need to, then let me tell you, you are, right? And then
Wow.
so that I put my name in, and I ended up getting a job, and I still went out on mat leave. So I had put my own question marks in my head, right? I had assumed that they wouldn't, right? And so I always tell people that this is what is holding back women, is the assumption sometimes that we have in our own heads. And from that day onwards, like, I don't have that, but I feel like I was really lucky. I had that wake up call. I had that chance. I always wonder, what if I didn't get that call? Then where would my life be at this point in time, right? And we shouldn't have to wait for somebody to tell us
Yeah.
that we're good, right? And that's where we should know ourselves when we're good.
Yeah.
And so today, I spend a lot of time helping other women to reach their potential, and to push forward, and to build a community of support, because I'm super determined that um, everyone should have the opportunity that you mentioned yourself, and that one raindrop raises the sea, right? It's taught me
Yeah.
to realize the power of my voice to lead and to inspire change and to keep talking about this. We don't talk about it enough, right? And so now
Yeah.
I
We don't
realize
talk about it
it
enough.
doesn't matter that you're the only woman in the room. That's what I tell myself. I walk into a room, I'm the only woman, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to hold back on my point of view. Every time I've had to push myself, and I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your perspective on this. Like, when you're in a room, um, like, do you push yourself to speak up, right? I think sometimes, I think about my own self, like, I have been an introvert for and I still think about myself as equal between introvert, extrovert. I don't like to network. I don't like to um, push, and dominate conversations. But I will make sure
Yeah.
that in whatever forum I'm in, that I push my point of view, and that I share my point of view. Because every time I do it, I realize it leads to some impact, to some conclusion, to some aha moment, where then a lot of people end up being impacted. And so to me, it's quality, not quantity, but I do
Yeah.
push myself to do that. And so that's how I've overcome that sense of alienation that you mentioned. That how do you overcome moments when
I
you
think I absolutely agree to what you said, because I mean, with before when I was a few years younger, I never thought it was important to push your point through. I just thought that if you speak, if you just say what you have to, people will listen to you. But unfortunately, that is not the situation. You'll have to be very you have to be on. You need to push your point through so that people listen to you, and especially I think more as a woman, because usually people I don't know why there's no logic to it, but it's just that if you're a woman, you need to put your, you need to seem like you are there, and you need to put yourself together. Like, yes, this is what I'm stating. You need to, like, you need to hear me through before taking a decision. So yeah, that's something I've learned through practical experience, and we can't deny that. That's true.
Absolutely.
So regarding your childhood, like you had a very multicultural experience, and then you were, I think, you were you had your childhood in the States. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
My dad
then
was an immigrant in the 60s. Yeah.
okay, and then you came to Asia, like for your career. So was it difficult to make this transition to come to a different country, especially if you're from the States?
I I I wouldn't say it was difficult. Look, I think it's mindset. I've seen many people who moved to different countries or moved to India and had challenging time. I actually didn't have a challenging time, but I think it's because of the way I think about them. My mindset was make the most of the opportunity. I didn't know if I was going for 2 years or however long. When I went, I thought maximize the experience that you're getting here, and then two became 10 that I was in India. Now I'm based in Singapore. And I would recommend, like, if people can move, and the opportunity comes across, I always encourage it, because I think you get a global view of the world that's different. I see my own kids living in Asia. Their perspective on the world is very different than the perspective I had growing up when I was only based in the U.S. And I think, yeah, it's hard, right? You can argue that, I felt like an imposter at times, right? I'm
Yeah.
Indian by heritage, right? But I was seen in a slightly different light. My accent is very American. Any conversation I would open my mouth, people would say, okay, she's clearly not from here. And I didn't know the market as well as people that have lived there, right? But I pushed myself to learn and to learn fast, right? And I think that's where, again, like, I'll go back to my consulting days. What I learned in consulting was you walk into environments that you know nothing about, you force yourself to learn really quickly, soak it all in. Don't be an outsider for too long, and then, like, jump in, right? And that's what I did. I embraced it 100%. I still to this date don't speak perfect Hindi, but I've tried. I now make ads in Hindi with my team, and in multiple languages in India, but it's because of that, just embracing it. And I found the good, right? I think you can find the good in any place, or you can find the bad. And that's why I really believe the difference between me and others that didn't like it was the growth mindset. I'm a half glass full person. I looked at the opportunity, if you ask me, for me to learn and to have a global view. But honestly, I think to be a woman in Asia and to have a family, the
Yeah.
opportunity to move up in your career is even better, the odds, because there's a lot of support that you can get. I've had almost, I joke to some extent, I have had an army of people that were helping me at one point in time. And so I joined Google when my kids were two, less than two. And then I have twins. So it's not like it was easy, but I looked at the positive was that I had a support system within the market. And so that's why 2 years turned to 10. But honestly, the impact now that I see that I can have in Asia is tremendous. And so while who knows, I might go back to the States someday. I don't have any intention of doing that. And I firmly believe I push people to they have the opportunity to move to somewhere else that they should. How about you? Do you
Yeah,
think you'll want to work
yes,
elsewhere?
I
Yeah.
do. I don't. So since my childhood has been in different places. Like right now, I'm in Dubai, but I mean, because my father would transfer every 2 years. We would be in London, we would be in Hyderabad in India, I would be in Sharjah over here. So to me, I think my father always went to places and he looked for opportunities. So I think when you travel and when you learn, you have an exposure about how people are around the world, even if you're not a working professional. Because I was a child back then, so to me, I feel like I do have a certain perspective as to how the world is. There's some global exposure around. So I think I would want a career where I'm able to travel quite often, and I don't want to confine to a single place. I can't imagine choosing one place on this planet to just stay.
That's amazing. I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. So you were saying about you were speaking about your growth mindset, right? So do you think growth mindset is what sets women leaders apart, or any leaders apart from, in their field?
I think it's a factor. I don't know if it's the thing that sets. I'm sure there's a lot of people who studied this much more than I have who would have a different opinion. I think it's a factor, but it's not the only factor. But I do believe I think it's a combination of a couple of things. I think it's growth mindset definitely is. That's what helps in this ever evolving world, right? Either you think that you have a capability of learning new things and continually evolving, and I think you have to even survive in today's world. And so I don't think it's about um, one group over the other. I think everybody needs to have this to move forward. I think strong EQ and understanding
Strong
of
EQ.
teams. I think abilities to like operate in ambiguity and messiness, right? I think these are things. So I wouldn't say it's only growth mindset that differentiates leaders. I think it's a combination of multiple things that you learn over time. So I don't think that's just can't be the only ingredient because you might have a growth mindset, but without maybe some of the other ingredients, it might not separate or differentiate completely. So I think it's a multitude of things.
That's true. So, going a bit behind. So I wanted to know, like, if you were even a few years before, like, if, for example, take 13-year-old you, would you have envisioned yourself as what you are today? Did you ever think that you would be someone in a similar, like, as successful as you are today?
You're too generous. I don't know if I'm as successful, but I wouldn't have envisioned this. When I was 13, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Um, I, I actually had started going down that road, and you don't know what you don't know until you start trying things. I remember the reason I ended up moving into business and to technology or because of courses that I took, right? And I really loved statistics. I loved economics. I remember this class I took in tech for technology marketing. That's where, and I realized like at the time when I took the technology marketing class, tech was not a thing, right? It was like 2002, like Amazon. Like I remember I went to Kellogg for my MBA. Everybody wanted to join consumer packaged goods companies. Nobody wanted to join any tech company, right? And so I think you don't know what you like until you learn various things, and then you start to understand the triggers of what you enjoy, and then your course of your career just moves. I've not planned anything in my career. Like people ask me that question. There's nothing that I've planned. I have gone with the flow, but I've always gone with my gut on what my gut tells me that I like. And so whether it was like understanding from courses, these are the things that you like. From the roles that I took, there were certain things that I liked. I always chose my next step based on something I was interested in. And the reason I didn't ended up pursuing a career in medicine is because I didn't have that same pull that I was getting elsewhere. But no, I never envisioned being here. I never envisioned living across the world. I never envisioned that I would be working at Google, and I sometimes, destiny, I believe it just, things just came and, and, and guided me here to some extent. And I am grateful for it. I think you have to have I have a ton of gratitude for the path that's brought me here. But I don't know, like you asked me about my journey. I don't know what's next. You have to think about it, and I evaluate and I think through my head what could be different things that I do next. But I'll let my gut and my past just kind of take its course.
Yeah.
How about you? What is your next project?
So I mean, right, since I've been doing a course in digital marketing, so I'm like the next few months, probably the next month, once I'm done with my course, I would want to freelance and see how I would find it, and if I'm a fit for it, because I've always been, I think after I graduated, I've been very interested in digital marketing, in digitization. I think it's because of the pandemic, or that everything has become digital, so I think it's got up more speed, and that's how I got to know about it. So that's what I was like, I mean, I would like to give it a try.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you have a plan. Yeah.
So who was your role model? I mean, like, do you have anyone who you look up to, who inspired you?
I mean, my mother definitely did. Like I mentioned, she actually studied when I was like 2 years old to be she was in computer science and programming, and I mean that was at a time when it was not even a thing. And then she kind of moved her up the ladder, and I saw her juggle everything. And that's why there's never been a point in my career where I said I I can't do everything, because my mom raised us, and she had a career and she grew in her career over decades, and that's what I saw. And I firmly believe, today when I think, sometimes I think maybe I'm being a bad role model for my daughter. I work a lot, right? I've traveled a lot for work. And I wonder, am I being a bad role model? Then I think it might be the opposite, right? Showing her
Yeah.
that I can do all of these things. And yes, maybe I'm spending a little bit less time with her than I would like. But I think in the end, I'm role modeling the possibility.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think. How about you? Who's your role model?
For me, my father is my role model, because I mean, ever since I mean, it's just very subconscious, but I've always wanted to be like him. Like, I think the way he is he's so open to learning new things, even at this stage. And I mean, he's so open to learning new things. He's open to exploring, and he's always excited about new possibilities, especially with technology. So I think I would want to be, even if I have 10% of who my father is, I think I would be blessed. So I always look up to him. So I mean, I hope I get to be, I mean, I always look at him as a yardstick or benchmark for success. So yeah, that's, my father is my role model. And my mother, because my mother has been very supportive of my father's it's when you have someone who's very successful in their professional space, it's also because of the family. And my mother has been a backbone, for the entire family. So I think I do take both of my parents as an inspiration, and professionally I would take my father as inspiration.
That's amazing. The good news is there's a lot of role models in the world.
Yeah.
And, I think we see so many. And very recently, the story of Falguni Nair from India.
Yeah.
She's become,
Yeah.
one of the biggest entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
what she's done and how she did it later in life, right? Like that's
At
also,
50.
that's why I also say at 50, right? She's become the most successful woman entrepreneur in the country.
Yeah.
And to see what she's done, it's amazing. And that's what, I think we always need to find role models in our life,
Yeah.
and no matter
To
what
be
stage. So
inspired.
she's another one. That's my most recent one. That's why I say, my we're always early in our journey. It's always our perspective on where we're
Yeah.
at.
That's
Yeah.
true. You had mentioned, I think this is very common, but a lot of women who have like families to take care of, there's a certain sense of guilt, like, am I, am I not, like you said, that, am I not being a good role model? So how do you talk yourself out of it? Like you just mentioned before, like how do you like because honestly, working women are a role model. So, but sometimes I know when you're in the place, it's hard. So how do you talk? How do
Yeah.
you like go forward with it?
Yeah. It comes with time. I would say the first few years, I didn't overcome it. And, a lot of, I'd say this is where sometimes, I find women don't support other women and as much as they should. I used to get a lot of, I felt I was looked down to for not being available to my kids or not showing up to every event. And I would get one line statements from other mothers who I felt were judging me, right?
Mm.
And but then I realized a few things. Like one, was I making sure that my children were not being impacted in any way? They were still doing everything, but maybe my husband showed up, right? It wasn't me. And I remember he also went through moments where he was judged for being the dad who showed up for these
Yeah.
things. But why
A
shouldn't
lot of
dads show
a
up,
lot of it's
right?
I mean it's a news to me, but a lot of fathers are judged for taking
Yeah,
initiative, like attending events, and
exactly.
it's so funny.
Exactly. And I think in Asia more than elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
And but I think this is what's needed is more fathers to do that. And so I do think I've overcome it because my husband leaned in. We weren't going to let our kids get and have anything compromised, but we split things, and he showed up more. He was okay to be on mother WhatsApp groups. There was like mom WhatsApp groups that were created,
Oh,
and if I was traveling for work, he would respond on the work on and but then I would get a lot of comments sometimes from women saying, "Oh, oh, your husband has to lean in for you," and I'm like, they're feeling bad for him as opposed to saying, "Oh, that's great." Like, and so that's where we have to all like we should support each other as opposed to bring each
yeah.
other down.
We need to
But I
break the
realized
gender
over time
roles.
we need to break totally. And so that's what I realized. I'm like, if I keep doing this, maybe we can break some of the gender roles. And I started to see that happening over time, that the conversation started to tilt to then other women saying, I'm going to ask my husband to do this, or I'm going. And so I've always just looked at like, look, I don't want to play to stereotypes. And
Yeah.
I also believe that change is possible, right? And but so that's where I realize that sometimes when women might be saying things to bring you down, it also could be because they might
Of
envy
that
my position,
condition.
right? They might actually like, and I think that's the truth, right? And so I try and rise above it and say, okay, I'm not going to let
Yeah.
the noise enter my head. I'm going to do what's important, and I hope it has a positive impact on somebody else down the line,
Yeah.
maybe. But I still think we have a long way to go. I hate to say it, but I think things are
Yeah.
sometimes going backwards as opposed to going forwards. And so all the more reason to push and to push hard,
Yeah.
and to be different. I don't mind. If I'm different, then it's fine.
Yeah, I know that's completely true. I think what women are doing to we have done for ourselves is pretty, I mean, it's great, but we still have a long way to go, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. They say the pandemic has actually pulled us
yes,
backwards to some extent, and I do believe that, and I see that. Um, And that's why I say again, like I'm very grateful for the chances I've had and the choices I've made. I tell people like the biggest choice or decision that you make is your partner, because I know that I wouldn't be able to do that without support at home,
yeah,
right? Otherwise, nothing else is possible. If you don't have that, then nothing else matters. And so, and it's hard. Like I think in an early part of in early in life, you don't think about these things, and you
yeah,
assume that you don't ask the tough questions of your future partner. I always tell people they should.
yeah. Exactly. Well, I think it's time we start talking about it because it's our future and, our career, and career is as
Yeah,
important as anything else. So, I mean,
exactly. Exactly.
women should not have to feel like they have to choose between a family and a career, because
I
men don't
agree.
get to do that. So we also
I
need to get
agree.
to it. Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
So, so you're a women leader, and so if you're a women leader, and since the series is related to tech and tech careers, is there any advice you'd like to give young aspiring women who want to come into tech?
My advice is to experiment and try with small things to get your confidence up. Um, Take a small class, do a thing, like build something of your own, and realize that it's not as tough as it looks. You're taking a digital marketing course. I encourage these kinds of things because, once you get your hands dirty, and you realize it's not as complicated as everybody makes it seem sometimes, as you overcome the fear. So try
Yeah.
and experiment. Two, um, realize the impact that it'll have. You mentioned also, Suchitra, during the course of the call, that everything is impacted by tech today, right? There is no
Yeah.
field that will not be. And to actually move forward within any industry or domain, it's going to be required. So don't think about it as a separate lane. Think about it as a mandatory requirement of anything.
Yeah.
And with that, I think then more women will lean into it. And three, like, don't let the gremlins in your head or what you might experience around you hold you back. Use self-talk to talk yourself into it rather than talk yourself out of it. And find role models or mentors
Yeah.
or peers or anybody that can help you. And it's programs like this that actually I hope would help, and more women should listen or find programs like this and talks like this to help push them
Yes,
forward.
exactly. That's true, because I think for me, with this opportunity, I get to like have a conversation with someone who's as successful as you, but I also get a lot of insight, and it just inspires me. So I'm damn sure that a lot of young girls, if given this kind of opportunity, will be able to be inspired, and because it's like you can't be what you can't see, but once you're able to see that, yes, you can be a woman in tech, you can be successful, and you can also have a family. I think it's easy for you to strive towards it. You have an idea and a picture, and you can envision it.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it was so nice talking to you today.
thank,
And thank you for the opportunity for speaking to you. It's
thank
been
you.
great to be motivated by listening to your story as well and what you're up to. And I'm so glad you're taking so many steps forward to move your career into technology, and that you seem amazingly confident, and you
That's
are
very
taking
generous of you. Thank
all
you.
the right steps to acquire skills and to do things that will shape the rest of your career. So I wish you lots of luck in the future too.
Thank you so much. And I mean, this was a very motivating like discussion. I'm very happy that I had this opportunity. So thank you so much for having this discussion with me.